that radio. You call that radio TV. Yo. You call that radio TV.
We are here to tell people that we hear you. One God will not allow us and people of conscience to lose our morale.
You call that radio.
Tucking on my heels and it says, bust off a bar garage. I can't let it die, it dies. 5, 4, 3, 2.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to You Call That Radio TV. Tonight we've got the legendary Attila the Stockbroker in the house. How is everybody doing? It feels like it's been ages since I've been on here. It's only been a week, but I'm wondering where all the buttons are, how everything works. Shouts to Wheels of Fleet, a real proper community grassroots organisation. Wheels of Fleet doing some good stuff down the Dumfries and Galloway area. We've got an absolute legend. He's an incredible poet. He's been doing it for 40 years. He's seen a lot. Just absolutely buzzing that he's agreed to join us to talk about his new collection. And yeah, we're going to talk about everything. So let us know in the comments how you're all doing. If you've got any questions, I'll try and read them out. And what do you think of my new Wowry? You know, I've made these new banners for what's coming up this week. So we'll just start with that. I hit the share button, and this is what's coming up this week.
You call that radio, radio, radio. More like a TV show, TV show, TV show. On almost every night, every night, every night. It's gonna be streaming live, streaming live, streaming live. You call that radio, radio, radio. More like a TV show, TV show, TV show. On almost every night, every night, every night. It's gonna be streaming live, streaming live, streaming live. You call that radio.
Is live, and I think we can go live right now to Attila Stockbroker. How you doing, mate?
Hello, I can't hear you at the moment, I'm afraid.
You can't hear me?
I can't hear
Alright.
anything. It's
Okay,
gone.
well,
It's I can see you fine, and obviously we were talking fine earlier on.
yeah.
But I'm completely I'm not. I can't hear a thing.
Okay, well,
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, mate. I can hear you
I
fine.
can't hear anything. Sorry about
Okay.
this.
No,
It just,
no worries.
while
though.
you were talking earlier on, it just went dead. You can hear me, but I can't hear you.
I can
okay,
hear you fine.
that's going to be interesting then.
Well, this is going to be interesting.
Let me I don't know. This is really strange. I mean, I'm not, as I say, I'm not technically terribly proficient, but I sort of know my way around things now, more or less. I mean, it's very strange because I can't hear a thing you're doing, but I'll do your poem just to prove I'm here. And
Okay.
if you can hear me,
Okay, cool.
then that's absolutely cool. 40 years in rhyme, 38
Okay.
full time. I'm still in my prime. Life has been sublime. I can use the music. Someone else can choose it. It was me flowing. You got it. Won't refuse it. Maybe not the done thing. Maybe it's a young thing. I don't chat no gun thing. No Mac Kim Jong Un thing. I'm into enlighten, representing Brighton. Now we're in the Premier League. Who are we going to frighten? My ends are southernmost. I'm from the Sussex coast. Hoser in the garden centre. Bread is simply toast. Don't give me no cup of tea when I'm getting uppity. Beer is my cup of tea. High specific gravity. Like the wind I'm blowing, like a river flowing. 40 years of knowing exactly where I'm going. 60 on the planet. Spoken word I span it. Ranting verse I ran it. Seagull, not organic. Old punk on a new trip. Not a special brew trip. Not a disengaged chip. Not a sniffing glue trip. Checking out fresh styles. Bringing tears and smiles from the Outer Hebrides to the Seven Dials. Beer I like it hoppy. Verse I like it stroppy. Sometimes I get personal, but I don't like it soppy. I remember Brother D. Grandmaster was legendary, but Uroy was the first to show. Toaster started off this flow. Ranting verse, reggae chat, hip-hop grime and all of that. We are simply spoken word, voices shouting to be heard. Respect to my fellow man, from Cooper Clark to Yellow Man, Stormzy, Tempest and Luke Wright. Spoken word is doing all right. When I began, there was no scene. Looking back on all that's been, 40 years of chatting rhyme. Having a fantastic time. Cheers. Still can't hear you.
Amazing.
This is quite funny, actually. Hey, Monty.
If you wanna keep times
You call that radio?
Here to tell the people that we hear you. One God will not allow.
You call that radio?
However you want to see it.
You call that radio?
However you want to say it, that's kind of part of the fun.
Powered by our patrons.
Brothers and sisters.
We are indeed powered by our patrons, so thank you to everyone who supports the show. We're with Attila the Stockbroker just now, who can't hear me. I understand that everyone else can hear me, and we can hear Attila the Stockbroker just great, a fabulous poem. So what I'm going to do is we're going to try something a bit differently. We're going to bring up the questions on the screen. So does this work?
This is fascinating because this will work even without me being able to hear you at all. Well, I mean, it's completely obvious that the right thing happened in that there wasn't, unlike in 2000 when Ralph Nader stood against Al Gore, thus allowing the vote to be split and Bush to get in. This time there was no split vote, and obviously the vastly preferable Biden beat the unspeakable, more or less fascist George Bush. That ain't to say that I've got a huge amount of time for Biden, but he's definitely better than Bush, definitely better than Trump. And Trump was, Trump was absolutely, if he'd had another election, if he'd won another election, it would have been an absolute nightmare. It's still going to be really, really difficult. And it has, for me, it has a lot of echoes in this country too. And I say this country, I'm talking about England, because it is completely different in Scotland. I'm really aware of that. But in England, if we're going to defeat the Tories, we have to have one candidate in every seat. That's my view. What is happening now in England is absolutely contemptible. We have the most right-wing Tory government in my lifetime, which is saying a lot. I mean, Dominic Cummings makes Margaret Thatcher look like Francis of Assisi or something. So it's it's essential that we actually sort of get our heads sorted out in England. As regards Scotland, well, I mean, I have to say that the Labour Party is a complete disaster now. I support the SNP. I think that you should have independence. I mean, I've really lost it with the attitude of the right wing media and the tabloids and an awful lot of idiots in this country, in England. To Scotland, I do now support. I support you being independent and going your own way, because I mean, I hate to live in Scotland, in the terms of the fact that I love Scotland. My stepson and his partner live there. I mean, my surname is Bain, and my origins many generations ago in Greenock. But I living in Scotland now, I hate to live in Scotland knowing that every time you vote, it doesn't make any difference because you're ruled from England. I mean, it doesn't make sense anymore. So no, it's a shame. It's a shame that I can't hear you, but there you go. It's really odd. This.
Well, it's fine, mate. But this is working. It's a new.
I'm trying to work it out.
It's okay. It's a new way of doing things. So, what is your writing process like?
What's my writing process like? It isn't. I just do it. It just happens. It's not. I never sit down and try and write anything. It just comes out of me. There's moments when I can write 20 minutes of stuff in a day, and then there's a couple of weeks I won't write anything at all. But I do write an awful lot. I mean, it's not just obviously poetry. It's prose. I write a lot of prose. I do a lot of writing on. I write for the Morning Star, but I've now got a really good platform on Facebook where I can, where I can reach a lot of people. Tens of thousands of people with my writing, and I love that. And I write about current events, and I write satire, obviously. I just get ideas and they come out of me. It's as simple as that. It's as natural for me as going to the toilet or whatever, or having something to eat or having a pint of ale. I think and I write and it just comes out. It's like, as I say, it's like having some beer. I never ever sit down thinking that I'm going to write something today. I either write or I don't, and it's absolutely natural. If I have to force it, I don't bother. I guess I'm quite lucky in that way. But I mean, I've earned my living at this for 38 years. I've been doing it for 40 years. I've done, God knows, 8 books of poetry, my autobiography, and I will now just proudly plug just out my anthology. This is my collected works, Heart on My Sleeve, published by Cherry Red Books. Just out, will be in the shops next year, but because of COVID and everything, I'm doing it. I'm doing it myself in terms of sales for the moment, because there's nowhere there's going to be any shop sales. We've just got it out, so I'm doing it. I'm selling it online via my Bandcamp page, and doing lots of gigs. I'm doing loads and loads of Facebook Live stuff, and you know, I'm well up for different things. It's lovely to be on here. This is everything. I mean, Heart on My Sleeve, which is me. You know, it's everything. It's literally. I mean, I started performing as Attila in 1980, and this has got like all the different aspects of me in it. I mean, really everything. I mean, because when I started off, I was, you know, to some degree, I was an angry, fairly one-dimensional, angry punk rock poet. But I've been doing it for 40 years now, and of course, I'm, you know, the first section is all family stuff. Let me do one of the first poems in the book. This is the true story of my stepfather and my relationship with him, and it's called Never Too Late. My father died when I was 10, and when she dried her tears, Mum met you in the choir. She'd known of you for years. I was so pleased when she told me that she would be your wife, and I looked forward happily to a new man in my life. But you were the classical singer who thought rock and roll was junk, and I was the bowling boogie boy who soon became a punk. You were the civil servant for whom everything had its place, and I was the left-wing activist out there and in your face. Yes, you were the head of the household, and I was the stroppy kid. We wound each other up for sure. We flipped each other's lid, but later we both learned so much, and something new began. And here's a poem I wrote for you, you decent, gentle man. So I went off to my own life, left you and Mum to yours. A few words about football, then the sound of closing doors. But the passing of so many years gave us both time to reflect, and slowly, oh so slowly, we forged a new respect. When you were ill the first time and found it hard to walk, I'd take you to the hospital and we would sit and talk. It felt so right and normal, and it was such a shame that it had taken all this time. Both stubborn, both to blame. Because you were the head of the household and I was the stroppy kid. We wound each other up for sure. We flipped each other's lid, but later we both learned so much and something new began. And here's a poem I wrote for you, you decent, gentle man. When Mum came down with Alzheimer's, 5 years we cooked and cared. And we were around there every day, so many thoughts were shared. Your simple, honest loyalty, the vows you've made, you'd keep. No longer the big boss man. Me, no longer the black sheep. Then came that day in hospital. The end was near. We knew. You told me, I do love you, John. I said, I love you too. You took my hand and squeezed it. Our eyes were filled with tears. The first time that we'd said that, it took 37 years. Because you were the head of the household and I was the stroppy kid. We wound each other up for sure. We flipped each other's lid, but later we both learned so much and something new began. And here's a poem I wrote for you, you decent, gentle man. It's never too late, never too late, never too late to say you love someone. And if it wasn't too late for me and John, then it's never too late for anyone. Cheers.
You call that radio?
Call that radio.
What about the people who hated on me?
Right, and then I see the disinfectant that knocks it out in a minute.
That's mad, isn't it?
Is this a Netflix thing?
It's actually a podcast.
What the fuck's a podcast?
You know, it's kind of like a radio show.
Oh, that! Radio!
Yeah.
And is there a way we can do something like that?
I couldn't help it.
By injection inside or
Yeah, I think so, because I think just pain in general, because I think like my poems
No, cut. Beautiful, absolutely amazing poem from Attila the Stockbroker, who can't hear me at the moment, but we can hear him. An incredible poem, and I just want to kind of ask you, do you have any advice for anyone dealing with a family member who has Alzheimer's or dementia since you've been through it?
Right. Were you asked? So here's the poem. The poem I wrote for my mum during the last stages of her long battle with Alzheimer's. It's 15 minutes long, but it does sum up, well, it sums up what I thought was the right thing to do at the time. And it's a poem that I wrote to help her remember who she was. And it's a poem which many people who work in care have requested me to do, and it's raised over. I did it as a pamphlet initially. It raised over £2,000 for the Alzheimer's Society, and this is called The Long Goodbye. I have to read this once I've got my glasses on. So I say I wrote it in my mum had Alzheimer's for over 5 years. I wrote it in the last stages of her Alzheimer's to help her remember who she was. And here we go. This is a poem for you, Mum. It's about your long, eventful life, the you that you were, and the you that you are now, the different you, the you with Alzheimer's. It's to help you remember. And yes, I knew when I was writing this that it was to help me too. So this is a poem for us, Mum. You say, it's like wading through treacle. When I get through the treacle, there's a mist, which makes me wonder why I bothered with the treacle. But there are places we can go in the hours we spend together where there is no mist, no treacle, where everything is clear. Back to Gravesend, to the council house, to the stern Victorian printer father and the spirited, intelligent little girl who went to Reading for the holidays to stay with your maiden aunt, a teacher, and discovered a new magical world, the piano. Auntie Evelyn paid for your lessons and your talent blossomed. Church organist at 16, not just in music, a scholarship to the county grammar school, matriculation, and then came the war. You say, it's as though bits of my mind are still awake and bits have gone to sleep or start imagining things. You were sent to Bletchley Park. You mostly can't remember what happened yesterday, but you can still describe every corridor at Bletchley, the walks through the town, and of course, the hours at the piano in the music room. Typing through the night on one of the Enigma decoding machines. Smoking to stay awake. You've always hated smoking. And the bustle and uproar when the nonsense you were typing suddenly turned to German and the boffins gathered round you, urging you on. Faster, faster. Your three friends, Jean, Margaret, Wynne, still friends nearly 70 years later. When the mist is all around, I say, tell me about Bletchley Park. In an instant, I have my mum back. You say, I am learning the difference between understanding and memory. I can still speak, still form sentences, talk to people, read the paper and enjoy it, though I don't remember what I have read or what I have said. In one ear, out the other. But if my memory is gone, how is it that I can remember how to understand? After Bletchley, London, Notting Hill, working at Bateman's Opticians in Kensington High Street, singing with the Royal Choral Society under Malcolm Sargent, premiering the works of Elgar. The music appreciation class where you met my father, 25 years your senior, living in a hostel on the run from a brutal marriage. You brought the sunshine back into his life, and when the divorce made the national press as a legal precedent, you didn't care. You were one. Visiting the Isle of Harris, honeymoon in Switzerland, my father's love poems to you. Yes, that's where I got this from. You tell me over and over again, the words from him, the music from you. Okay, not exactly in the way you'd have expected. Rude words, loud music. But you're used to that now. You've had more than 40 years of it after all. You say, I know the meaning of the phrase, a fate worse than death. Come on, Mum. You're at home in your warm, comfortable house in Southwick. We live just round the corner. I'm here, my wife Rabina's here, family and friends are here. You could be in Baghdad or Kabul, family killed, cowering in a ruined cellar, not knowing who or where you were. It's not that bad. You say, you're right, John. I mustn't be so silly. Together we smile and sing. Always look on the bright side of life. Da-da, 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 da-da. I go and make you a cup of tea. I'll bring it to you. You say, I know the meaning of the phrase, a fate worse than death. Of course, I'm used to the repetition, but I'll never get used to that one. Now we're moving into the 50s, and here's the treacle. You can't remember the year I was born. Then, with great authority, 1947. Hang on, Mum. You weren't married till 53. Though I'm a bit of an old git these days, I'm not that much of an old git. It was 57. Tears fill your eyes. How can I forget that? I remember you as a little boy, always questioning, always loud. No, Mummy. Why, Mummy? Too right. You say, I've spent my life doing, but now I'm just being. The move to Southwick when I was 3. The worms, then the fish, lizards, slow worms, newts, terrapins, snakes. Going to football every week with my father, and the one time I heard you argue. Do you remember why it was? That's right. He left his Brighton season ticket in his trouser pocket. You put the trousers in the washing machine. We both laugh. You say, memory is such a wonderful thing, but you don't appreciate that until it's disappearing. My brain feels like a sponge with great big holes in it. I tell you how clever you are to use that analogy, because if you look at a photograph of the brain of a person with Alzheimer's, that's exactly what it looks like, a sponge with great big holes in it. Sometimes you say your brain feels like soup or suet pudding or sausages, but mostly it's a sponge, a thirsty sponge full of life, which soaked up everything it possibly could for more than 80 years and is now gently leaking it away. You say, I love you, my son, you are my rock. I say, I love you too, Mum. I'm your punk rock. Then the difficult years. My father's death when I was 10. Yes, it was 1968, Mum. I know it feels like a lifetime. It's half of one. My battles with school and a new stepfather. And so away to university, to the world of the punk rock, to a band and a squat in Brussels, a flat in Harlow Town with my friend Steve, and in 1980, to a life as Attila the Stockbroker. A life you tried hard to understand and discussed with me late into the night on my visits home. A life you always encouraged and were proud of, and on a few memorable occasions came to share, as we will see. Of course, you had your own life, very different from mine. Organist at 3 churches, teaching the piano, singing with the Brighton Festival Chorus, playing with Southwick Operatic Society, president of Southwick WI. Remember the gig I did for your WI? You must ask your son to come and read for us, Muriel. You were very worried. I'm not surprised. I chose my material carefully. I got an encore. And in 1991, you'd won your first big battle, breast cancer. You say, Alzheimer's is such a cruel disease. You can have your breast removed, but not your head. That's a shame. The surgeon prodded your breast and said, that'll have to come off. His exact words. So angered and devastated were you by his unbelievable insensitivity that after your mastectomy and your recovery via New Zealand, where you went to see your brother, if this is going to kill me, I'm going to see Mick in New Zealand first. You started a local counselling service for people with cancer, especially women with breast cancer. Especially women with breast cancer dealing with insensitive male bastards. You knew. You helped so many people, and I was so proud of you. You say, time is all out of joint. Things that happened yesterday seem a long time ago, and things that happened a long time ago seem like yesterday. That is frightening. Now we're nearing the 90s and we're knee deep in treacle. Remember Canada, Mum? Not really? I'll remind you. 1989. You said, I'll come with you. My old Bletchley friend Wynne lives in Toronto, and you did. I was touring 11 cities, east to west. You stayed with Wynne in Toronto, then joined me on tour all the way to Vancouver. Hey, Attila's brought his mum with him. You played piano for me on my song Tyler Smiles at the Vancouver Folk Festival to a standing ovation and enjoyed it so much that 2 years later you toured New Zealand with me, saw your brother Mick again, and then to Australia. Struth, Attila's brought his mum with him. They thought it would be fun for you to interview me on national TV on a beach next to a sewage platform. You were brilliant. You say, I feel as though I'm moving slowly down a road which is gently subsiding. Your swan song with the Brighton Festival chorus. Elgar's dream of Gerontius at the Royal Festival Hall. Mum's last gig. Your favourite piece of music ever. I was there. Then, in 1998, your final tour with me. My favourite memory of all, Germany. I've never been to Germany, John. I want to go there before I die. I want to talk to the people there. All this prejudice in my generation is just silly. But Mum, I said, it won't be like those other tours. I've told you about Germany. I play in anti-fascist squats and autonomous centres. We sleep on the floor half the time. Sometimes it's very cold and very smoky. There is loads of very loud punk rock and everyone drinks the most incredible amount of beer, including me, especially me. I'm not sure it's the right tour for a lady of 75. But you were having none of it, so off we went. You, me, adverts, punk legend TV Smith and Danny the driver in my old Citroen charging up and down the motorway. I told the organisers and they were brilliant. They made such a fuss of you. Clean, comfortable and warm everywhere, no smoke and punk rock turned down where necessary. Most solicitous of all, my old mate Mad Butcher Mike. A big, hard, red skinhead, founder of a legendary hardcore anti-fascist record label, loathed by every right-wing scumbag in Germany. You took a real shine to him and he to you. He's not a mad butcher at all, John. He's a very nice chap. Germany was your last foray. You sailed into your 80s, happy in Southwick. I'd moved nearby years before, then married Rabina. She spotted the signs before I did. I guess I simply couldn't believe it would happen to you. And then came that fateful day in May 2004 when you set out in the car to visit Daphne, your sister-in-law, and forgot where you were going or why you were going there. It's been more than 5 years now, and here we are. The psychiatry says you're doing very well, that the tablets are working, that we're doing all the right things, that the hours we spend are precious hours. We know that. I know that. I see it in your face every time I enter the room. Your indomitable spirit, your need for human warmth, for company, for stimulation, for mental challenge is as strong as ever. Anyway, for me, no contest. You made me. You need me. I'll be there. That's it. But it's hard, Mum. For us and above all, for you. Which is why I wrote this poem to help you remember. The poem of your life, the poem of our life. Mum died on June the 9th, 2010, the day before her 87th birthday. Her last words to me were, have a good gig. Thanks, Mum. I am. Cheers.
Brothers and sisters. Is that you, Daniel? Are you before me?
Call that radio.
You call that radio.
Hello?
Hello, yes, this is Dog.
Do you call that radio? We're live with Attila the Stockbroker, an incredible poem there.
I've tried everything I can here.
A lot.
I've tried everything I can. I can't make this work.
That's okay,
I can't
man.
hear a thing. But if you can hear me, that's
okay.
cool. I don't know what I've done.
So
I don't
I
know
can
what
hear you,
I've
mate.
done. I don't know what's going on here. Hang on. Am I getting
I think we've got
messages?
some questions coming in from people. So leave your questions. How did you get into the poetry scene? That's a good question from Alan Rorison. So maybe we can ask that. How did you get into the poetry scene?
How did I get into the poetry scene? I didn't. I've never been in the poetry scene. I started when I was 15 playing bass in punk bands. Well, before punk, that was. I started on. I was always writing poems, but I never thought I was going to be. I never thought I was going to be a kind of a performance poet. I always thought I'll be the singer and songwriter in a band. Before punk, and well, punk inspired me. Before punk, I was into. I was massively into T-Rex, Mott the Hoople, the Velvet Underground, MC5, stuff like that. And punk was the most natural thing in the world for me. And the message of punk, the whole idea of you know, being able to just get up there and do whatever you wanted without you know, without having to worry about getting signed or being famous or whatever. It was just obviously that was tailor-made for me. But I was a bass player. I was a bass player in punk bands, trying to write work. Well, I was writing songs, but I was a bass player, and it was difficult, as any bass player will tell you. I mean, it's actually physically impossible to sing and play the bass at the same time. Eventually, basically, to cut long story short, by about 1979, beginning of 1980, I started getting up on stage in between bands, shouting some of the lyrics that I'd written and some poems that I'd written, pissed punks and skinheads, and they went down really, really well. And that's really how it started. I mean, as I say, I'd always written poetry from the age. My father was a very keen amateur poet. I grew up with the cautionary tales of Hilaire Belloc, but I was never a big poetry fan. I mean, I loved the Mersey sound, Pat McGough and Henry, but I was never a big fan of poetry. I mean, for me, it was music. It was always rock lyrics, music lyrics that were the thing. And music is my great inspiration, remains so to this day. I mean, anybody who knows anything about me knows that 50% of what I do is actually music. I mean, you know, I've done, I don't know, about 40 albums, well, 40 recordings generally, about 20 albums. I've got a band called Barnstormer 1649, which combines early music and punk. So I've never considered myself to be part of the poetry scene in the sense that I don't do that many poetry gigs. I do my own gigs where sometimes there are poets on. I've got a lot of friends who are poets, and of course I'm a part of the scene in the sense that, I mean, when I've that poem that I did earlier, 40 Years in Rhyme, when I started off, there was no poetry scene. There wasn't. Spoken word was people talking to each other, like it says on my book. When I started, spoken word wasn't a scene; it was just people talking to each other. And I've seen it develop. Obviously, we started off with the ranters in the early 80s, and I've seen it develop so much, and it's fantastic how it's developed. But I don't do that many poetry gigs for this. I mean, one of the reasons is that I do, you know, my sets are normally between an hour and a half, so I don't do featured spots at poetry gigs. I can't stand open mic nights. I'm allergic to open mic. I'm allergic to, you know, and poetry slams. You know, I'm allergic to poetry slams, allergic to open mic nights. I do my own thing, really. That's what I do. And I encourage the people who I consider to be really good and give them spots supporting me. But I would never want to have 20 poets on before me at a gig or anything like that, because I say I do my average set is well over an hour. And as I say now, with lockdown and everything, I've got a Facebook page, a Facebook group called Attila the Stockbroker Introduces, which has got about 4,800 people on it now. Where every Tuesday I give the page over to a mainly young, unknown, or not that very well known performer, although there's been lots of other people on there who are older and better known as well. Tomorrow we've got Isaac Hughes Dennis from Hebden Bridge, who's batshit. 8 o'clock, Attila the Stockbroker Introduces. I'm very keen to promote and help people using words. I mean, for me, it's the combination is normally words and music. I mean, and you know, that's what I really love. But as I say, in terms of like open mic nights and poetry events where everyone gets up in turn and reads a poem, nah, that's not for me. I'm not dissing it at all, but it's not me at all. I mean, I'm because I didn't come from that scene. I came from the sort of live music scene, and when I first started getting up on stage, I was getting stuff thrown at me. You know, as an anti-fascist, I got attacked by the far right a few times. I mean, I have a low tolerance level for what I call hippie bollocks in poetry. When I talk about cherry blossom in my poetry, I mean boot polish. Should we put it like that?
Well, congratulations in 40 years of being a professional performing writer.
Yeah, well, absolutely.
What advice would you give to an up-and-coming artist who wants to make a career out of it?
Well, I mean, the most fundamental thing is that lesson of punk. It's the DIY thing. Now, if you think about it, when I started in 1980, obviously there was no internet. There was no framework. There was the supportive network of DIY punk gigs. And we all, of course, had mailing lists and everything. But in those days, a mailing list was literally people wrote down their address on your bit of paper at the end of the gig, and then you got a stamp and an envelope, and you sent them a mail out telling them all the gigs you had coming up and what merch you had for sale. And I mean, by the time the internet arrived in the sort of late, 1990s, I had a mailing list that was 3,000 stamps, 3,000 envelopes. The reason I'm saying that is because it's just about 800 billion times easier now than it was when I started out. I mean, when I started out, you had to do it. It was literally DIY. You had to do the posters on the walls. You organised the gigs and all the rest of it. Now, if you're really good, and you've got a modicum of understanding of the of the internet, you can actually become really well known as an internet sensation on Facebook Live or YouTube, just by writing and performing without really getting out of your house. So, I mean, for now, I would say, as always, the first thing you need to have is really, really good material. I mean, that without that, then obviously you can't. You can get so far with self-belief and energy and determination and hard work. But if you're really going to crack it, you need good stuff, and it needs to be different from everybody else. And then you just need to work really hard. And I would say now, use the internet, use social media. There's all these new ones. I mean, when lockdown happened, and I really didn't understand that much about this. I've done a few broadcasts, but my life was on the road. 100 gigs a year with the merch and everything, traveling the country, doing a mixture of music gigs and spoken word gigs, everything from art centres to scruffy pubs everywhere. And obviously then I had to learn the internet in order to carry this on, and I did, and that's what I've done okay. I'm not brilliant at it, but I mean I've certainly failed tonight because I've done something which means I can't hear anything that's going on. But I mean my main
Dan Layton says,
crikey.
Can you write no matter how you feel?
I'm getting questions now, and you're talking, and I can't hear you. This is really quite funny.
Well, I'm reading the question out. I'm reading out the questions as they appear on the screen, so you're not missing.
Excuse me, I need to open another can. I talk a lot, and when I talk, I need beer. Beer is an essential. Beer is an essential part of the process as well. Let's make no bones about it. Dan Layton from the northeast, indeed. Incidentally, earlier on when I was talking about people not watching the live stuff, I meant on YouTube. I mean, I've got a huge audience on Facebook Live, but I don't understand why Facebook works and YouTube doesn't. I mean, I just don't. It doesn't matter. But I mean, how can I always right no matter how I feel? I mean, it's funny. You're coming from it's interesting. I suppose I just have a completely different perspective on this, or just a different way of being. It's writing it's not, it just happens. I don't even really think about the mood I'm in. I get an idea for a poem or a song, and it's usually just a few words, a title or a concept, like for instance, just to give you one example, many years ago I heard that William Collins, that publishes the Bible, had been taken over by Murdoch, and I immediately thought, hang on a minute, that means there's going to be a new revised version of the Bible according to Rupert Murdoch. So I wrote the poem. And once I got the title, when I have the idea, when I've got it, because everything flows from an idea, from a few words for a title, for an idea, or I get a structure. It's always ideas. It's the idea that comes. Once I've got the idea that it's going to be the poem or the song, then that it happens really fast. And once I've got the idea, almost invariably, I have to do it really straight away as well. I mean, I have to I have to get it down there as quick as I can, because the moment I've got the idea, I have to get it out there. I never sit in front. I never sort of have a writing day. And the idea of going, I mean, you know, I do follow Alexis Sales. Absolute, his when he said that anybody uses the term workshop outside the context of light engineering should be shot. I agree with that. I mean, I can't imagine sitting around in a circle saying today we're going to write a poem about this. You know, it's just something that comes out of me. It's not. It can't be. You know, it can't be sort of channeled into a period of day, or, you know, between 3 and 6 o'clock. I'm going to write. Now, I completely accept as well, because I'm a professional performer, I don't have the constraints of a day job. And of course, for a lot of people, if you're going to write, you know, you have that constraint. And I'm not in any way dissing that. I'm just saying that for me, it's just there. Anyway, this is a real shame. I don't know what I've done. I've really. I mean, I'm muting. If I don't know what's happened with the microphone. I mean, you know, I've got my mic on. I don't know what I've done. Anyway, I'm not going to go on about it, because that just spoils the spoils the show. Man. As long as you can hear me, then that's cool.
I can hear you, mate. I can hear you. So,
you know,
Alan
cheers.
Robertson,
I mean,
says, lovely poem, very moving.
Yeah, the Long Goodbye is certainly one of my poems of which I'm most proud. I mean, that again, you know, how did that come about? It just came about because I was thinking of the incredible life that my mum had, because she did have an amazing life, and right until the end, she could still. I mean, I can still talk to her. I can still have conversations with her right until the very end. Last thing she said to me, have a good gig. It's just that I would talk to her, have a perfectly rational conversation, and then 30 seconds later, she'd ask me the same thing again. So, and she knew who I was and everything, and she was very proud of me, but she just got no short-term memory at all. And so I wrote this poem, and the wonderful thing was I could just read it every day. And every day, when I was reading it, she was back in her life. Because when I mentioned that moment, the particular moment that I was talking about, whether it was Bletchley or being in the Isle of Harris, or traveling around punk squats in Germany with me, the moment when she was in that moment, of course she remembered it. But you know, and what she as well, the other thing, you know, the things that were further back. I mean, she should always talk about Bletchley Park. She couldn't talk about what she'd had for breakfast, because she'd always talk about Bletchley Park. So the further back things were, the easier it was for her to still have them in her mind. I mean, as I say, she had great connections with Scotland. I mean, since you're broadcasting from Glasgow, I will mention this. I mean, my mother, well, at Bletchley Park, she met three girls. They were all girls. They were all 17. Jean, Margaret, and Wynne. Jean Sandilands from Linlithgow. Margaret. What was her second? I can't remember her second name, from Edinburgh. From Glasgow, and Wynne from Wynne Tulinski. She became after she married from Edinburgh, and they were friends all their lives. And I've been up to many times up to Scotland. As I say, my surname, my real name is John Bain, originally traced back to the Knock, to Greenock. My great grandfather left Greenock in 1851 to come down to work. He was an upholsterer and carpenter. He came down to work on the exhibition in London in 1851, and that's how we all became Southerners. And of course, I'm as Southern as you can get. I live in Southwick on the Sussex coast, Port Tanner, Shoreham Harbour, in between Brighton and Worthing.
Stephen, what? Do you still get inspired to write poems related to football?
Stephen, what? Hello, mate. I'll do that. I'll do that story in a minute. That's just for you. And we must get this. Three-a-side poet in residence England v Scotland penalty shootout, because I know that what's his name from Derby, crikey, Jamie Thrasivulu from Derby is well up for it. I mean, he's half our age. You know, I'm up for it. I used to be an absolute clogger, but I mean, I'm 63, but I can still boot a football quite hard. And Ian McMillan has theoretically said yes, although appears to be quite scared at the actual reality of the idea. But yeah, poet in residence at Brighton 1997 8 to 2011, officially still writing. Absolutely. If you check out From Hereford to Here on BT Sport, the very first game at our new stadium, which I still call Falmer, even though it has a name connected with a credit card that I won't use. I don't have a credit card. So I did that for the very first game on BT Sport, From Hereford to Here, when we were playing at home to Man City in our first ever game in the Premier League in 2011. Having, as you know, for those of you who don't know, in 1997, the club that I supported all my life were bottom of the 4th division with no ground. Our ground had been sold to property speculators. I was the co-founder of Brighton Independent Supporters Association. We fought back, saved the club, kicked the bastards out, then campaigned to get a new ground. We got our new ground. 2011, moved in. I was appointed poet in residence by our previous chairman in the age when we were still battling to get the club back to Brighton, and I'm still very much writing poetry about the Albion now, and I was the PA announcer, so I was in the ground doing poetry and doing the PA, what I might do at this point, actually, so I'll have to get a copy of my autobiography. Hang on a second, just give me a minute.
What an absolute pro! He can't hear what we're saying, but he's still
put the light
having
on
an
as well.
amazing show
Let's
himself.
see a bit
He's Attila
easier
the
here.
Stockbroker.
Yeah, this is the true story of the funniest thing that ever happened to me doing the PA at Brighton Hove Albion Football Club, and it is quite funny. It really is. So anyway, we're playing. We're bottom of the whole league. We've been thrown off our ground. We're playing our home games at Gillingham, which is 70 miles away. The tunes I've been playing pre-match have been going down well with the Albion fans I talked to, and the whole idea of playing music that was as energetic as possible to try and create some sort of atmosphere in a home ground 70 miles away was a hit with new chairman Dick Knight and the club. It was an early kick-off on Boxing Day 1997. We were bumping around second from bottom of the whole football league, with a team perhaps even worse than the one we'd had the previous season. We'd obviously had to set off really early to get to Gillingham in time for the game, and everyone was a bit bleary-eyed. So for the first time, I decided to play Anarchy in the UK by the Sex Pistols. It had been on for about a minute when a policeman burst into the box. Take that off, now! Why? I asked, but I could see that he was really angry, so I did and put the Clash on instead. You can't play that record at a football match. It's banned. It's on the list. What list? I asked. No one has ever told me there was a list of records I couldn't play. Well, it's obvious, isn't it? He shouted. It's obvious. I stood there, the Clash playing in the background, perplexed. It definitely wasn't obvious to me. The fact that I needed to explain further, made him even more angry. It incites violence in the crowd. I thought for a few seconds. Well, officer, I said, I bought 2 copies of Anarchy in the UK in the black sleeve on EMI Records on the day that it came out in 1976. I've played it and heard it many, many times since. Not once has doing so given me violent thoughts of any kind whatsoever. I've also been to all 92 Football League grounds, and every time I've heard In the Air Tonight by Phil Collins, I've had to restrain myself from committing serious acts of criminal damage. He didn't get the joke. And a couple of days later, Brighton Hove Albion Football Club received a formal letter from Kent Police banning me from doing the PA at Gillingham any longer. Dick Knight phoned me up. I'm not having that, John. He spoke to them and the ban was rescinded on condition that I didn't play Anarchy in the UK again. So I didn't. I did play Smash It Up by the Damned and I Fought the Law and White Riot by the Clash in the next couple of weeks, though. No policemen appeared in the box. Obviously, those 3 weren't on the list. Cheers. And while I'm, let me just hold them both up. There's my new anthology, Collected Works, 40 years, and there's my autobiography. You can get them both along with loads and loads of other stuff, loads of CDs and T-shirts and everything from attilathestockbroker.bandcamp.com. And there's a special deal for the autobiography and the anthology together. So cheers, everybody. Aberdeen's finest punk IPA. I still can't hear a word you're saying. It is quite funny being in this situation where I can't hear anything, because as I said to Mark at the beginning, I am capable of just talking non-stop for hours and hours and hours. So let's do another poem from my book. Let's do I've done a very, very personal one. So let's do no, I'll do this one. This is the one I wrote for my wife. I'll do a lockdown poem, but before that I'll do this one. It looks like we might have a vaccine. I don't believe a word anyone says about this. Sorry, get this right. I don't believe a word the Tories say about it. I do absolutely believe the medical profession, and the medical profession have apparently said there may be a vaccine, which is bloody good news. This little rap's here to inspire us not to get coronavirus. Lady Gaga, Miley Cyrus, they don't want coronavirus. It's a disease coming on the breeze and none of us would like it, please. It's a disease coming on the breeze. Piss off, Trump. It's not Chinese, bloody hell. It's a pandemic running through the world at a rate systemic. Let me spell out my position. I'm 62 with a lung condition. Let's all work hard to avoid it till researchers have destroyed it. Don't get cranky. Don't be a fogey. Use that hanky. Bin that bogey. This little rap's here to inspire us not to get coronavirus. Lady Gaga, Miley Cyrus, they don't want coronavirus. It's a disease coming on the breeze and none of us would like it, please. It's a disease coming on the breeze. Piss off, Trump. It's not Chinese. Please be kind and give assistance. Always do it at a distance. Get your normal shopping done. There's enough for everyone. Panic buying stupid caper. Put back all that toilet paper. What a crappy shit idea. Local pub delivers beer. This little rap's here to inspire us not to get coronavirus. Lady Gaga, Miley Cyrus, they don't want coronavirus. It's a disease coming on the breeze and none of us would like it, please. It's a disease coming on the breeze. Piss off, Trump. It's not Chinese. New dance called the Pontius Pilate. Time we all learn to freestyle it. Water hands and a bar of soap. Cleaner than a microscope. No, don't scratch your dirty bridge. Then go down and raid the fridge. Please keep safe. Please keep well. Coronavirus, go to hell. Cheers.
Do you want weird or do you want it?
If you don't really know what's going on, there's a show that also doesn't know what's going on. Call that radio TV. You call that radio. Call that radio TV. You call that radio TV.
Yeah, Jim. Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting. I mean, the poetry thing, as it were. It's very, very different now. The whole scene is sort of there. If I'd started 30 years later, if I was starting now, there is an absolutely ready-made scene to go into. Of course, my attitude stemmed from the fact that when I started out, there was the beat poets, obviously the Mersey poets. There was John Cooper Clarke, there was Linda Kwesi Johnson, and then there was us, the ranters, Jules, Benjamin Zephaniah, the late great Seething Wells, all of us lot, and nobody else. And poetry, in terms of entertainment, was people getting up at punk gigs and shouting, really. And obviously there was this other scene, this beat scene, but it was not part of. That wasn't part of anything that we related to. It was a bit like the difference between the punks and the hippies in terms of, we were the Clash and they were sort of Van der Graaf Generator or whatever. Although, I mean, I would say that I have a lot of time for the Mersey poets and the Mersey Sound Book. The great book by Brian Patton, Roger McGough and Adrian Henry was absolutely superb. It was one of my inspirations, along, as I say, with the Cautionary Tales of Hilaire Belloc. It's very different now. There's an awful lot more infrastructure for people who get involved in poetry to use. And as I say, for me, it's always been just, obviously I'm there, I'm a part of it. A lot of people say that I'm one of the founders of the scene, and I guess I am. But I've always had this kind of rock and roll attitude to my work. I mean, that's one of the reasons, the fundamental thing as well. It's about the energy and about the live performance thing. It's that, when I get up on stage, I'm doing a performance. I give 100%. I put everything into it, and the performance is as much part of it as the actual words. That's the whole dilemma and dichotomy with performance poetry. Obviously, as we all know, when I was doing this book, I had to work out. Because I've obviously there's much more stuff that I've written, but I instinctively knew the ones which would work best on the page, and it was those obviously that went in there. And 326 pages, so there's a lot to go in there. So let me do a different poem. I can't.
Yeah, go for it, man.
Yeah, indeed. Let me do a different sort of poem for you now. I've done. I'm going to do this one. This is for my wife. This is a lockdown poem. It's right at the front of the book. There we are, the two of us. And this is called To My Wife in Lockdown, 8th of September 2020, which was the anniversary of my first gig, 40th anniversary of my first gig. For 40 years today, I've lived this life, travelled the world for concerts far and wide. For half of this, my love, you've been my wife, a glorious inspiration at my side. A quarter of each year or more apart. For me, a time to rant, for you to rest. Then I return to you, my loving heart, resume our path together, two abreast. When lockdown hit, at first I was bereft, though I believed it should have come before. My travelling ways through all the years were gone. The gigs I built my life around no more. I thought, then wrote, then learned to broadcast live, though IT still remains a fickle friend. My office now my gateway to my world, a world I first thought would come to an end. But now we were together all the time. Strong characters faced with a brand new test. My table manners and the toothpaste top. That tireless tongue which never seems to rest. But all our days were filled with love and fun. We never thought something will have to give. We looked into each other's eyes and said, no one I'd rather be in lockdown with. I loved to watch our garden as it grew. Not sometimes this year, every single day. Tomatoes from the seed to bright red fruit, green beans to freezer from the starting tray. When lockdown eased a bit and summer came, my childhood days returned, my rods, my bike. A few hours apart now all we need, a night apart now something not to like. One day, I hope, I'll hit the road again. One day your peace and quiet will return. But this great revelation in our love, enforced by fate, was wonderful to learn. So, darling, thanks for marrying me full time, this stroppy poet, loud of mouth and arse. And as my valediction in this rhyme, I hereby dub you comrade wife, first class. All in here.
You call that radio, more like a TV show, TV show, on almost every night. It's gonna be streaming live. You call that radio, more like a TV show, on almost every night. It's gonna be streaming live. You call that radio.
That I was wanting to ask is, are we witnessing the collapse of capitalism in real time? All right, man, are you gone? I think he's...
This is all getting a bit weird now. I've just experimented with new ways to try and get the sound back. I just turned my inbuilt camera off. I turned my inbuilt camera on and the Razer Kaio thing off, but it doesn't make any difference. I don't know what's happened.
It's not. I appreciate what you're doing anyway.
Are we witnessing the collapse of capitalism in real time? Sadly, no.
Yes.
We're not. There's no. We had a. I mean, again, I have to think about this in two ways. I have to think about this from my perspective and from yours, because I'm a lot of people, sadly, in England tend to just regard the whole of the UK as one place, and I totally recognise that it's not. I think you could genuinely, in independent Scotland, achieve a level of social democracy unparalleled in these islands in history, because you have a consensus. you know, there are the sort of the people of my, how, it's a lazy expression, gammon, but you know, there are far fewer sort of blokes, you know, older blokes who are really bigoted and racist and stupid in Scotland than there are in England. There are far fewer people generally who doff their caps to authority, working class people who doff their caps to authority and basically think that they're, you know, that they're the old Etonians and everybody are born to rule. You've got a very healthy disrespect for authority, and especially English authority. And I do genuinely now think that in many ways your best bet is to go for independence. And I do understand the whole issue of unionism and you know, the whole thing where, you know, where sadly a lot of Scottish Labour people voted Tory in 2017 when we really could have had the most radical government ever. There's a lot of Scottish Labour people voted Tory to keep out the SNP, which ultimately gave us the Tory government because they won the seats in Scotland, which they didn't need to. And you know, we're not witnessing the collapse of capitalism at all. What we are at the moment, what has happened is, you know, what I've always said, and it does give a certain degree of hope that ultimately, if capitalism recognises that the only way that it can save itself is by treating people decently, then it will do so. And not everybody is being treated decently, but this coronavirus pandemic has meant that these measures have had to be put in place, not because the people that are doing it are, you know, are good-hearted or kind or whatever. There's huge opposition within the Tory party to all these measures, you know, because they're not, you know, there are many people in the Tory party, laissez-faire, Adam Smith, free market people saying we shouldn't be doing this. This isn't what Tories should be doing. You know, people should be standing on their own 2 feet when, of course, obviously they can't, because they're falling over because they got coronavirus and they're going to die or be really ill. So, but you know, but ultimately the ones at the centre have realised that if they're going to save their own skin, and not be responsible for the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people, they had to do this, and they've done it. Now, what that proves is that austerity is a pile of bollocks, that all the policies they had before were complete rubbish, and that actually, you know, as I've always said, a socialised economy, you know, with a proper, fully functioning health service, a decent education system, all run by the state, no private involvement, is the best way forward. And of course, the biggest indictment of all the different things that have gone wrong in terms of recently has been the handing over of the track and trace system, the test and trace system to, you know, people like Deloitte Touche and Circa, who have absolutely they've got the contracts because they're friends of the Tories, not because they have any conceivable knowledge of or interest in the medical world. They just want to make money, and they will take any opportunity to do so. And of course, as a result of that, the test and trace system is a total fiasco, because you can't run a test and trace system if you're an accountant. It's just not how it works. You need to be, you know, Russia Today. I was one of your favourite sons from some people. George Galloway invited me to go on his Sputnik program on Russia Today. I said no, I don't. I have very strong views on Gorbachev, on the collapse of actually existing socialism in 1989, and on what Russia has become. And it don't really matter what I think. The crucial opinions of the Russian people, a majority of whom think they were better off before 1989 than they are now, are far more important than what a punk rock poet from Southwick thinks about that. But no, I don't. Russia Today is just. I mean, it's different from the mainstream. It's different from Murdoch, obviously. It's deliberately supposed to be. But I don't trust Russia Today any more than Murdoch. I mean, you know, they have different. They've got a different agenda, and sometimes that agenda coincides theoretically with mine. But in many ways, in my opinion, it's a bit similar to the Donald Trump, you know, when he talks to people from Pittsburgh and says, you know, I'm with you, we're going to bring back the steel and all the rest of it. They want to hear this because everyone else is ignoring them. He knows he's not going to do it. They suspect he's not going to do it, but they want to hear the words anyway. How do we avoid disinformation disinformation in this modern age? Very interesting one for me, this. I have managed to benefit hugely through using Facebook. Facebook, not so much for the broadcasting, although I use that, but in terms of my essays. If you want to read my stuff, I write hugely on all contemporary issues and other stuff as well. Facebook.com/Attila the Stockbroker. Join that page. There's loads and loads and loads of writing on there. I have a basic rule on my page. I will not disseminate. I write no memes, apart from the really good one. There is one meme that is accepted on my page. It's the Bloody Foreigner one. It's a picture of the awful 70s band Foreigner, and it says Bloody Foreigner coming over here demanding to know what love is, which is the funniest thing I've ever seen on the internet. But apart from that, no memes. You write your own arguments. You come up with your own, no cut and paste, no abuse, no threats, no violence. Disagree, but you do so in a civil way. And if you post anything that isn't true, post anything that's obvious fabrication, you get banned. Now, I've got 34,500 whatever people on my page. I get commended by Facebook, believe it or not, for my policies, and get invited to monetize it and have selected advertisers. They can all fuck right off, obviously. It works for me. Basically, how we avoid disinformation is by the in my opinion, by these social media networks, which have huge good as well as huge potential for evil, huge potential for greatness, good as well as really shit. Basically, they are legally obliged to remove stuff which is fake news, which is disinformation. That there is an independent commission, independent body of people set up, appointed to monitor, like a huge moderating system on these platforms, which basically, when they see stuff which is manifestly not true, as with Donald Trump's ridiculous tweets recently, that they just basically say, well, that's coming off. I mean, but the other way, obviously, is you avoid disinformation by having enough brains to actually work things out for yourself and not get taken in by it. But unfortunately, that is too much to ask for so many people.
I'm just saying thank you very much for joining us, even though you can't hear
absolutely.
me. But I think we could have one more poem.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I will shamelessly again plug my autobiography. It's 5 years ago, and my collected works right now, all on there we go, all on Bandcamp. Thanks for having me. Sorry about the cock up, which is I'm sure is my end somewhere, but it actually hasn't worked. It doesn't matter really, has it? It's fine. So what we do, I do Spirit of the Age to finish off. Yeah, 40 years of doing this. I love it. As I say, my interface with the world of poetry is interesting. I am regarded as one of the originators of the scene, but so much of what I do has been outside the world of poetry in the sense of poetry performance, as I'm doing rock gigs and all the rest of it. But I do all kinds of gigs in all kinds of places. 40 years. So it's called Spirit of the Age. You've got to be young and black to rap, right? So I've no chance because I'm old, punk rock and white. You've got to be young and black to rap. Wrong. Anyone can rap or write a punk rock song. So don't look at me with scorn or division. I don't accept boundaries of cultural division. I'm MC Attila and I'm right in your face. So listen up, folks, because I ain't going no place. This rap's called Spirit of the Age. All my life, I'm going to be on stage, millions of ideas buzzing around my head, and I'll be rapping till the day I'm dead. Age 48. I wasn't sedate, rancid rule. Joe Strummer is my soulmate. 49, I was doing just fine, reeling in the right of a verbal fishing line. 50, I was nifty. So don't look at me like I'm sad or I'm shifty. 51, I'd have had some fun if Brighton scored 10 and Crystal Palace scored none. 52, I was talking to you, and I make more sense than Blink 182. 53, top of the tree, red rebel rhymes and rapping rebel poetry. 54, like I said before, show me a fascist, I'll show him the floor. 55, still cutting it live, while boring arty poets took a nosedive. 56, I was high in the mix, this whole punk rocker, and learned some new tricks. 57, still first 11, drinking real ale like it's manna from heaven. 58, I was fueling debate, giving it straight from the 51st state. 59, laying down the line, pulling out words and watching them intertwine. 60, still demanding attention. I'm never drawing my punk rock pension. As long as I'm alive, I'll be live on stage. Age of the Spirit, Spirit of the Age. Thanks for having me in a one-sided conversation, in a strange void. But thank you very much, Mark.
Brothers and sisters, may the peace that can only come from the one God be upon you. We are here to tell the people that we hear you. One God will not allow us as people of conscience to lose our morale.
powered by our patrons. Amazing, incredible stuff from Attila the Stockbroker. That's bizarre, never had quite such a one-sided conversation in my life, but I think it would probably have been pretty much the same whether he could hear me or not. Amazing poet, amazing history. Go and get his autobiography. Go and get his collection of works, and there's a deal on right now if you go to the Bandcamp page, which is here. Attila the Stockbroker.bandcamp.com, or go to the Facebook page. There's over 35,000 people on that Facebook group, on the Facebook page, and there's also the Attila the Stockbroker Introduces page, which is about 4,000 members on it as well. And like I said, I think it's every Tuesday. It's tomorrow night. It'll be introducing a new artist as well. You did brilliantly, Mark. I didn't really do much. Shouts to Buddha, superb, says, and you're great, mate. Thanks for the awesome answer, says Buddha as well. So, Attila spins a great yarn, says Petra. He does indeed, man. Who else could actually just interview themselves for an hour? Amazing, man. He dealt with that really well. I don't know why there was a bit of a sound issue, but everything was fine in the sound check. These things happen. Such is life in the modern internet age. I'll be back tomorrow night with this guy. Yeah, is real, who's sort of half Fife, half Jamaican. He'll be telling us about his journey, and from taking Scottish, Jamaican, rap, reggae, hybrid. Interesting chat, man. Looking forward to hearing his story. On Wednesday, we've got the amazing Texture, aka Bram E. Gibbon. He won the Scottish Poet of the Year competition, and then he quit poetry. And he's making some amazing hip-hop just now, dystopian hip-hop. What a lyricist. And a very interesting guy. He's been on the show briefly before, but this is going to be an actual sort of deep dive into his works and his thoughts and stuff. So I'm looking forward to that. And then on Thursday, we've got Grieger, man. Absolutely incredible. Gaelic, hip-hop, trad musician. He can play a bit of everything, and just an amazing lyricist. And also doing it in Gaelic, which is just amazing. Looking forward to hearing what Grieger's got to say on Thursday. On Monday, Sonic Youth in the house. Kat Hepburn and Kevin P. Gilday, who've both been on the show before, but this time they'll be together talking about the new digital launch of Sonic Youth, which is an amazing platform. It used to be an amazing live gig platform, and now it's all going digital. It's all computers these days. You need an IT guy, mate. It's nothing. Everything's fine. But maybe one day we can get an IT guy. And the only way we're going to do that is if we get some more people supporting the Patreon. And thanks to everybody who does support the Patreon. Used to make a difference. We're up to 173, I think, patrons. We're trying to get to 200 before we can book the Christmas special. So if you enjoyed this show tonight, or you're enjoying the shows in general, and you haven't yet signed up to the Patreon, then go to patreon.com/you call that radio, or you can make a one-off donation at paypal.me/you call that radio. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much to Attila the Stockbroker tonight. He absolutely amazing. Proper legend in the house tonight. And we'll see you tomorrow for Yes, Yeah is Real tomorrow. For anyone who's into a bit of reggae, a bit of hip-hop, or just a story of how you can go from Scotland to Jamaica and back, I believe. I don't know where he is. He might be in Jamaica, might be in Scotland. Who knows? He knows. And we will find out tomorrow night. And that's it. Go and buy Attila the Stockbroker's book. Go buy his collection of works. And we'll see you tomorrow for this. Thank you very much, people. I'll see you tomorrow.
You call that raid? You call that radio? You call that radio TV? No. You call that radio TV?
This is You Call That Radio.